Just like Ilya predicted, the era of pre-training larger base models for longer or more data seems to be coming to an end, as evidenced by GPT 4.5. So for the past months, the focus of the AI community has completely shifted towards these inference time reasoning models and agents that can use tools. This seems to be the way forward, as evidenced by the impressive scores these models get on PhD level benchmarks, but as it's easy to overfit on some of these scientific benchmarks, we are always left wondering if it really translates well to real-world usefulness. Well, to give us some insights into the actual capabilities of these agents, a new benchmark has popped up, as David Hershey, an employee of Anthropic, has created an agent which is at the moment trying to beat Pokemon Red and is live streaming on Twitch. Are these reasoning models a form of general intelligence that can beat a real-world game without being trained specifically for this task? Well, the live stream started almost 2 weeks ago, together with the release of Claude 3.7, so let's look at all the highlights so far to give us some insights. Let's briefly explain how the agent itself is implemented. It is based on Claude 3.7 with thinking mode enabled and has access to a couple of tools. The most important one being the use emulator tool, which takes as input a series of commands to control the game and will output the resulting state, which is represented by a screenshot with some coordinates laid on top, so Claude also knows which tiles are accessible and which ones are not. Also, as output, Claude will receive the resulting state of the RAM, which will help it know what's in its inventory, what its party consists of, and where it's currently located. To make navigation a bit easier, also a navigator tool is implemented, so Claude can just specify a certain coordinate and then the navigator will interact with the use emulator tool to actually navigate to that coordinate. Finally, Claude can also add things to its knowledge base or add it and delete it. The knowledge base itself is basically just a Python dictionary. In its latest version, Claude can also make multiple of these knowledge bases to record knowledge of different parts of the game. The prompt itself just consists of these tool definitions, a system prompt with some basic info about the game, the knowledge bases it decided to load in at that current moment, and finally the conversation history, which just consists of the reasoning process of Claude and the resulting tool calls. Because, of course, the context is of limited size, only 200k tokens, after a while Claude also summarizes its conversation history. And finally, there's also another LLM called Critique Claude, which will provide sometimes feedback on the knowledge base of Claude to help with consistency. Claude started its journey on February 25th, and as the first VOD is no longer available and not that many people were recording, I will try to stitch together the first moments by what I could find. As a starter, Claude chose Squirtle, which he named Shell. Soon after, he also caught a Nidoran that was named Spike and a Sparrow that was named Swift. After reaching Viridian Forest, it became clear that Claude was playing the game a bit different from the average human, as he was, for example, trying to interact with the trees at the boundary of the forest in order to pass through them. However, all this wandering around wasn't for nothing, as he caught a Pikachu which has a 5% encounter rate and named it Bolt. A bit later, Claude had navigated himself through the forest, and after checking the sign, just to be sure that this was indeed the exit, he left Viridian Forest once and for all. It is time for the Pewter Gym battle with Brock. This battle was very easy for Claude, as he correctly reasoned that Bubble was effective against both the Geodude and Onix of Brock. It also quickly became clear that Claude had a pretty good understanding of the type advantages thanks to its pre-training. After his victory, Claude navigated slowly but surely to Mount Moon over the next 4 hours. However, after blacking out and being transported back to the Poké Center, something strange happened, as Claude was convinced that he could interact with the nurse in the Poké Center, even though he was just standing in the middle of the room. Claude also mentioned that he saw no nurse behind the desk. This is a good example which shows that the vision capabilities of Claude might be a bit lacking. However, after a while he exited the Poké Center and it was finally time for his biggest challenge yet, Mount Moon. After 3 hours of Mount Moon exploration, Shell evolved. However, everyone watching the stream noticed that Claude's exploration skills were a bit odd, as he for example seemed to ignore items. A genius moment though was when the party was running low on health and Claude realized it could just use an escape rope to return to the Poké Center. The chat correctly noticed that they had witnessed an AGI moment. However, the feeling of AGI was very brief, as 8 hours later Claude was still wandering around in Mount Moon, and after exiting Mount Moon through the entry, he thought he had successfully navigated to the exit and could navigate to Cerulean City. Another 10 hours later, still in Mount Moon, it seemed Claude had gone crazy, as he for example started to talk to rocks which he recognized as NPCs. Claude also started to think that the stairs of Mount Moon were ladders, and by going up and down them, he thought he could maybe reach the exit. Claude seemed to have truly lost his mind. After 37 hours, Claude was still in Mount Moon, and although he seemed to be recording the coordinates of all the ladders in his knowledge base, it didn't seem that he was actually using them well in his reasoning process. We also witnessed that Claude is very bad at keeping track of who he already talked to, and seems extremely sociable as he is interacting with almost every NPC he encounters. This becomes a bit frustrating to watch, as he even interacted with the same NPC twice in 2 minutes without clearing its context, so the previous conversation is still in its conversation memory, but still he decides to talk to it again. This shows that although the context of frontier LLMs is becoming quite long, they don't really reason that well with the context they have. Although the Mount Moon grind was getting fairly frustrating, there were still some funny moments like this, where after interacting with an NPC who is stuck in Mount Moon, he mentions that the NPC is lost just like him. There are little moments like these which almost make you believe that an actual human is playing the game, instead of the actions just being the result of a lot of matrix multiplications, and are weirdly enough quite funny and adorable. A while later, Claude blacks out. However, he believes that he has been transported to the other side of Mount Moon, so that he has actually found the exit. It would actually take another 30 hours before Claude finally reaches the fossils in Mount Moon and decides to go for the dome fossil. Claude also correctly knows that this fossil can eventually be turned into Kabuto. Not much later, Claude finally reaches the exit of Mount Moon, a truly remarkable achievement, although it took more than 78 hours, and I think it costs more than I make in a decade if I would try to do this through the Anthropic API myself. Up to Cerulean City. After learning how to jump over ledges and clearing the Golden Gate Bridge, Claude faces off against Misty, his highest stakes battle yet. Claude was dominating hard and even critiquing the use of Misty's X defense, as Claude correctly remarks that it only boosts physical defense and is thus useless against the Thundershock of his Pikachu, which is a special attack. After easily wiping the Staryu thanks to the type advantage of Pikachu, Bolt tanks an attack of Starmie and is left on 1 HP. However, in a true clutch moment, Bolt is able to land a Thunder Wave on Starmie, causing it to be paralyzed. In the meantime, Bolt hits not 1, but 2 critical hits in a row. It is time to buy more Nvidia stock because clearly AGI is among us. After doing more than what was thought to be possible, Bolt finally faints and Chell is being summoned to finish the job, which it easily does. Although the navigation skills of Claude resemble a person with poor vision and dementia, his Pokemon battle skills do seem on point, and seeing this, I believe he does have the battle skills to beat even the Elite Four. However, reaching even the next gym was starting to look like a challenge, and Claude also had forgotten that he still needed to visit Bill in order to get a ticket for the SSN. Instead, he at first seemed keen on exploring the Badge House and was stuck in a loop where he would first talk to the bald guy about all the different gym badges and then went outside while struggling to get back in. After finally escaping this loop, he immediately found himself stuck in another loop in which he was repeatedly looking for the trashed house, which would lead him to the next gym. However, he repeatedly thought that the Cerulean City gym was actually the trashed house, despite already having beaten the gym. At first he seemed to notice upon entering that this was not the trashed house, as Claude had access to the RAM, so we could clearly check that this was just a gym. However, after a while, Claude seemed to think that the RAM was actually wrong and that this was indeed the trashed house. Things started to look very desperate, as Claude even thought that the sonic boom attack of the Slowbro outside would reveal the location of the trashed house. Claude was extremely trash house built, but for some reason couldn't locate the actual trash house because of his bias of interacting with the first thing inside. Also, he still needed to get the SSN ticket from Bill, which he also completely forgot existed. As the creator of Claude Plays Pokemon noticed that Claude might be actually stuck and that his memory was poisoned, a new improved mechanism was proposed where Claude could write to a lot of different files and a countdown was put in place until a possible restart, so Claude could actually start a new game with this improved memory mechanism. In a last desperate attempt, Claude even evolved Spike into a Nidoking by using a Moonstone. Despite being cool that he realized that he could use a Moonstone, all hope was lost and Cloud 1 was eventually killed by its creator. RIP. But there was not much time to mourn, as immediately another Cloud would begin his journey. This time with an improved memory tool, so that hopefully Mount Moon would be smoother and we wouldn't get stuck in Cerulean again. After naming himself Cloud and his rival Wacloud, the journey of Cloud 2 began. He quickly left his home in Palatown and went searching for Professor Oak. This proved to be challenging, as from his background knowledge he knew that he had to find tall grass and that this would trigger an event to make Oak appear. However, he constantly misinterpreted a random grass patch as the tall grass and was then confused why Oak wouldn't appear. After that, he also mistook the chubby NPC for Professor Oak, followed by mistaking himself as Professor Oak, as he mentioned that the character with the red outfit was Professor Oak. He also would constantly go back into the research lab and mistake, for example, the blue-haired NPC for Professor Oak, as well as his rival Wacloud for Professor Oak. Cloud seemed to be really desperate and was stuck in this loop for a while. However, eventually he decided to explore the northern region of the map and triggered the Oak event, which would take him directly back to the research lab. As in his previous run, Cloud had chosen Squirtle as his starter, the chat was waiting in anticipation which starter Pokemon would accompany Cloud 2 throughout his journey. Personally, I was hoping for Charmander, but after inspecting all three Pokemons, Cloud eventually decided to go for Bulbasaur, which is a good choice for the first two gyms. Also, a funny thing happened as Cloud tried to name his Bulbasaur Sprout, but after getting confused by the letter T, probably due to vision issues, he just decided to give up and decided that the name Sprout was good enough. There are moments like these that make you forget that you're actually watching a computer play, as a few years ago I would have expected computers to get extremely precise instead of getting seemingly more human like this. After winning his first battle against his rival and noticing that Claude shouldn't blame his Charmander as Claude had simply outplayed him, it was time to make our way to Viridian Forest. Viridian Forest was relatively smooth as Claude was picking up items, and after being wiped out, he successfully returned and cleared it. Time for a gym battle against Brock. Claude hadn't caught any other Pokemon yet, but thanks to Sprout the battle was very easy. He correctly identified the type advantage of Vine Whip against rock types, and he one-shotted both the Geodude and Onix of Brock. Claude had successfully obtained his first gym badge, the Boulder Badge. As Sprout also had reached level 16, he evolved into a Ivysaur, which Claude correctly interpreted as excellent news. Time to once again make our way to Mount Moon, but not before catching a Jigglypuff. Claude mentioned that Jigglypuff had a decent level based on its size, whatever that means, and also incorrectly thought that Jigglypuff was a fairy type, which isn't true in Generation 1. Nevertheless, he caught the Jigglypuff and named it Puff. He then used the same Jigglypuff to put a Pidgey to sleep and caught it as well. Claude then tried to name the Pidgey Sandy, but for some reason once again decided to give up and just named the Pidgey Sand. Time for Mount Moon, which once again proved to be a big challenge even with the improved memory system. The trouble started when after 25 hours Claude blacked out in a battle against a Zubat and was transported back to the Poké Center right before Mount Moon. However, he once again mistakenly thought he had arrived at the Poké Center after Mount Moon and also recorded this in his knowledge base. Because he thought he had cleared Mount Moon, he was trying to find a route to Cerulean City and tried to find this by trying to navigate through a mountain barrier, which of course is impossible. Sometimes Claude thought that the entrance of Mount Moon would be actually the entry to Cerulean City, but still didn't realize he hadn't cleared it yet, and instead came up with something he called a blackout strategy, in which he would intentionally try to get his party wiped out to be transported back to the Poké Center. And in his delusional thinking, he believed that this was the way forward to get to Cerulean City. So for the next 30 hours, he would constantly refer to the blackout strategy when inside Mount Moon, wipe out his party, accidentally enter Mount Moon again and repeat the process. One time it was so bad that Claude even failed in his strategy of blacking out, as he used Run and simply hoped that Run would fail, although all his other moves had no PP left. Nevertheless, he eventually succeeded in blacking out, which Claude found perfect, and every time he thought he had achieved something remarkable. However, he eventually found out that the strategy wasn't consistent and found a way to get to the Rocket member guarding the fossils. After an easy victory, he once again chose the Dome fossil, as he seemed to be really keen on getting a Kabuto. And after 69 hours, he finally found his way to the exit. So despite his blacking out strategy, he reached the exit 9 hours earlier than the previous Claude. On his way to Cerulean City, he correctly unloaded all the Mount Moon knowledge files he was using from his prompt and created one for Cerulean City, which also shows that the new memory tooling is actually pretty helpful, and Claude also knows how to use it. After healing his Pokemon in the Cerulean City Poké Center, Mount Moon was finally behind us and could no longer be returned to, at least not until Claude would get Fly. In the Poké Center, Claude also learned about Bill, which is required to be visited in order to get the SSN ticket. But before clearing the Nugget Bridge and making his way to Bill, Claude wanted to challenge Misty and get the Cerulean City Gym badge. Being lost for 69 hours in Mount Moon also had its advantages, as his Ivysaur had gotten pretty strong, and by using Vine Whip, Claude was simply one-shotting the Pokémons that the trainers guarding the Cerulean City Gym had. As Claude had put Puff in the first spot of his party and would then switch out to Sprow, Puff was also gaining experience, which is a smart way to level. It was finally time for his battle against Misty. After switching out Puff for Sprow, he once again continued his strategy of spamming Vine Whips, and after landing even a critical hit on Starmie, Misty was defeated and Claude obtained the Cascade badge. After this, Claude made his way to the Nugget Bridge, where he was taunted by Cloud. But Claude didn't let it get to him, as he mentioned that this was just typical rival interaction. However, the battle was one of the most challenging yet. This time, instead of directly switching from Puff to Sprow, he correctly identified the type advantage of Pidgeotto against his Ivysaur. So he instead used Sing to put the Pidgeotto to sleep and then switched to Sprow. The chat also noticed that Claude wasn't playing around, as evidenced by the AGI spamming. While the Pidgeotto was asleep, Claude used a couple of Vine Whips and tackles. However, the Pidgeotto woke up just in time before being defeated and landed a sand attack, which lowered the accuracy of Claude and caused it to miss his tackle. If Pidgeotto would attack with Gust, it could do substantial damage to Sprow. However, luckily it chose a second sand attack, and after a successful Leech Seed and Vine Whip, while Pidgeotto did a quick attack, Pidgeotto was defeated. The second Pokemon was an Abra, and as Abra can only use Teleport, this was once again an easy victory. Afterwards, the Rattata was also sent quickly to a graveyard by being one-shotted with a critical hit. However, for the Charmander, Claude had a different strategy and first switched to his Pidgey, which wasn't at a type disadvantage like Sprow. After bringing the Charmander to low HP by spamming Gust, Claude made the mistake of once again using Gust instead of Quick Attack, which would have allowed him to finish the Charmander before it could attack. Maybe Claude hadn't quite reached AGI yet. Nevertheless, the weakened Charmander was easily finished by Sprow, and Claude had successfully defeated his rival. The Nugget Bridge itself was also easy for Claude, as his Pokemon were already very strong. After defeating the Rocket Grunt at the end of the bridge, he decided to correctly return to the Poké Center to heal his Pokemon. The improved memory system of Claude seemed to be working, as he hadn't forgot about Bill, like in his previous run, and decided to go back up to the Nugget Bridge and eventually arrived at Bill's house. After some fooling around where Claude couldn't recognize or knew how to interact with the computer in order to turn Bill back into a human, he eventually learned what he had to do and successfully obtained the SSN ticket. He swiftly returned to the Cerulean City Poké Center and at this very moment of recording is trying to make his way to Vermilion City. So this has been Claude's journey up until now. Despite that the progression is relatively slow, I find this very interesting to watch and it offers us some really good insights into the capabilities of agents. Claude is very good at Pokemon battles, and this is not surprising, and is also very good at helping us with coding, and this just requires local reasoning. However, Claude still is very lacking in spatial reasoning, long-term memory, and also switching between multiple goals. So these are clearly some points that AI really has to improve on before reaching AGI. On top of it all, Claude also has a cute personality, which makes the stream fun to watch, and I also think more research and fine-tuning needs to happen to actually give these agents a fun personality, as I really want to interact with agents like this, and ChatGPT itself seems pretty bland. So I think I might even do it myself, try to fine-tune some more agents to have fun personalities. Overall, I'm losing hope a bit that Claude 3.7 is strong enough to actually finish the Pokemon game, as there are many more difficult dungeons at the end of the game, and with its poor navigation skills it might not be good enough. However, I will be definitely watching the stream and I'm looking forward to what Claude might do next. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like videos like this, make sure to subscribe, and I hope I see you guys in the next one.